Part 1, The Reluctant Alliance. Heading, A Mission Born of Necessity. Commander Yarrick Voss adjusted the straps of his combat armor, the faint hum of the ship's engines vibrating through the floor beneath his boots. He hated diplomatic missions. They were messy, unpredictable, and often involved dealing with people who thought they were better than everyone else. This one was no different. Across the dimly lit briefing room stood Lady Serenith Valora, her luminous skin casting a soft glow in the shadows. She was tall, elegant, and carried herself with the kind of grace that made Yarrick feel like a bull in a crystal shop. Her silver robes shimmered with intricate patterns, and her piercing violet eyes regarded him with a mix of curiosity and disdain. "You're the one they sent?" she asked, her voice melodic but laced with skepticism. Yarrick crossed his arms, his rugged features hardening. "Yeah. Lucky you." Heading, Clash of Cultures. The mission was straightforward, or so Yarrick had been told. Retrieve an ancient artifact from the ruins of a long-abandoned alien city. The catch? The city was buried deep beneath the surface of a hostile planet, and the only way in was through a labyrinth of crumbling tunnels and forgotten dangers. Serenith had insisted on coming along, much to Yarrick's annoyance. She claimed her knowledge of ancient alien cultures was essential to the mission's success. Yarrick suspected she just wanted to prove she could handle herself in the field. "This isn't a sightseeing tour," he grumbled as they prepared to leave the ship. "Stay close, do what I say, and try not to get us killed." Serenith raised an eyebrow, her lips curving into a faint smile. "I'll keep that in mind, Commander. But perhaps you should take your own advice. I've heard humans have a tendency to overestimate their abilities." Yarrick shot her a glare but said nothing. He wasn't here to argue. He was here to get the job done and get out. Heading, Into the Abyss. The surface of the planet was a barren wasteland, the air thick with dust and the faint scent of decay. The entrance to the underground city was a gaping maw in the earth, its edges jagged and worn by time. Yarrick activated his helmet's light, the beam cutting through the darkness as they began their descent. The tunnels were narrow and uneven, the walls lined with strange carvings that seemed to shift in the light. Serenith ran her fingers over the symbols, her expression one of awe. "These markings, they're older than anything we've ever seen," she murmured. This city wasn't just a settlement. It was a sanctuary. Yarrick wasn't impressed. "Great. Let's hope the locals left the lights on." Heading, First Encounter. They hadn't gone far when the first sign of trouble appeared. A low growl echoed through the tunnel, followed by the sound of something skittering across the stone floor. Yarrick raised his weapon, his eyes scanning the shadows. "Stay behind me," he ordered, his voice low. Serenith ignored him, stepping forward with a small device in her hand. It emitted a soft pulse of light, revealing a creature unlike anything Yarrick had ever seen. It was small but fast, with multiple limbs and a mouth full of razor-sharp teeth. "Fascinating," Serenith said, her voice filled with wonder. "It's a remnant of the city's ecosystem." "It's a pest," Yarrick corrected, firing a single shot that sent the creature scurrying away. "And next time, let me handle the wildlife." Heading, A Fragile Partnership. As they pressed deeper into the tunnels, the tension between them grew. Serenith's curiosity often led her to wander off, forcing Yarrick to constantly rein her in. She, in turn, found his brusque demeanor frustrating and unnecessary. "You don't have to treat me like a child," she snapped after he pulled her away from a crumbling ledge. "Then stop acting like one," he shot back. "This isn't a game. One wrong move, and we're both dead." Despite their differences, they made progress. The tunnels began to widen, opening into larger chambers filled with strange machinery and artifacts. Serenith's excitement was palpable, but Yarrick remained on edge. Something about this place didn't sit right with him. Heading, The First Test. Their first real challenge came in the form of a massive door blocking their path. It was covered in intricate carvings and seemed to pulse with a faint energy. Serenith studied the symbols, her fingers tracing the patterns. "It's a lock," she said finally. "But it requires a key." Yarrick frowned. "We don't have a key." "No," she agreed. "But we have this." She held up a small crystal she had taken from the ship, its surface glowing faintly. Yarrick watched as she inserted the crystal into a slot in the door. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a deep rumble, the door began to open. "See," she said, smiling triumphantly. "I told you my knowledge would be useful." Yarrick didn't respond. He was too busy staring at what lay beyond the door, a vast chamber filled with towering structures and glowing orbs of light. "Welcome to the heart of the city," Serenith said softly. Yarrick took a deep breath, his grip tightening on his weapon. "Let's hope it's not the death of us." Part 3, The Artifact's Awakening. Heading, The Final Approach. The group pressed forward, their steps cautious as they navigated the labyrinthine ruins. The air grew heavier, charged with an almost palpable energy that made the hairs on the back of Jarek's neck stand on end. Serenith's glowing skin seemed to pulse in rhythm with the faint hum of the ancient machinery around them, while Corin moved with the quiet confidence of someone who had spent too long in the shadows. "The artifact chamber is just ahead," Corin said, his voice low. "But be warned, it's not just the Guardians you need to worry about. The artifact itself, it has a way of getting inside your head." Yarrick frowned. "What do you mean?" Corin's expression darkened. "You'll see." Heading, The Chamber of Light. The final door to the artifact chamber was unlike the others. It was massive, its surface covered in intricate carvings that seemed to shift and change as they approached. Serenith studied the symbols, her brow furrowed in concentration. "These markings, they're a warning," she said softly. "They speak of the artifact's power, its ability to reshape reality itself. But they also speak of a price. Those who seek its power must be willing to sacrifice everything." Yarrick glanced at her, his expression grim. "We're not here for its power. We're here to retrieve it." Serenith nodded, but her eyes betrayed her unease. "Let's hope it sees it that way." Corin stepped forward, pressing his hand against the door. It slid open with a deep, resonant hum, revealing a chamber bathed in an ethereal light. At its center stood the artifact, a massive, pulsating crystal suspended in midair, its surface alive with swirling patterns of light and shadow. Heading, The Artifact's Influence. As they stepped into the chamber, the air seemed to thicken, the hum of the artifact growing louder. Yarrick felt a strange pressure in his mind, like a voice whispering just out of reach. He shook his head, trying to clear the sensation, but it only grew stronger. "Do you feel that?" Serenith asked, her voice trembling. Yarrick nodded, his grip tightening on his weapon. "Yeah. Let's make this quick." Corin hung back, his expression unreadable. "Be careful. The artifact doesn't like to be disturbed." Heading, A Vision of the Past. As they approached the artifact, the whispers in Jarek's mind coalesced into images, flashes of a life he had tried to forget. He saw himself as a young soldier, standing amidst the ruins of his homeworld, the air thick with smoke and the cries of the dying. He saw the faces of those he had failed to save, their eyes accusing. "Yarrick?" Serenith's voice cut through the vision, pulling him back to the present. He blinked, his breath coming in short gasps. "I'm fine. Let's just get this over with." But Serenith's expression told him she wasn't convinced. Her own eyes were wide with fear, her skin glowing brighter than ever. "It's showing me things," she whispered. "Things about my people, about the war that destroyed this city. The artifact, it was created to prevent such a thing from happening again. But it was also meant to unite our species." Heading, The Truth Revealed. The artifact's light intensified, its patterns shifting to form a holographic image, a figure that resembled both Serenith and Yerrick, yet was neither. "Welcome, seekers," the figure said, its voice a harmonious blend of tones. "You have come far, but the true journey has only just begun." Yerrick raised his weapon, his instinct screaming at him to shoot. But Serenith placed a hand on his arm, her touch calming. "Wait," she said. "Let it speak." The figure continued, its gaze shifting between them. "The artifact you seek is more than a tool. It is a bridge, a connection between your species, designed to bring about a new era of cooperation and understanding. But it is also a test. Only those who are truly united can wield its power." Heading: A test of unity. The chamber seemed to shift around them, the walls dissolving into a swirling void. Yerrick and Serenith found themselves standing on a platform suspended in space, the artifact floating between them. "To claim the artifact, you must prove your unity," the figure said. "Face your fears, your doubts, and your past. Only then will you be worthy." Yerrick glanced at Serenith, his expression uncertain. "What does it mean?" She met his gaze, her eyes filled with determination. "It means we have to trust each other. Completely." Heading: Confronting the past. The void around them shifted again, revealing scenes from their pasts. Yerrick saw himself as a young soldier, standing amidst the ruins of his homeworld, the air thick with smoke and the cries of the dying. He saw the faces of those he had failed to save, their eyes accusing. Serenith's vision was no less painful. She saw her people, the Luminos, torn apart by war and greed. She saw the moment she realized her own family had played a role in the destruction, their legacy tainted by betrayal. "We can't change the past," Serenith said, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. "But we can choose how we move forward." Yerrick nodded, his own resolve hardening. Together. Heading: The artifact's choice. The artifact's light flared, its patterns shifting to form a new image, a vision of the future. They saw their species working together, their combined strengths creating a new era of peace and prosperity. They saw themselves at the center of it all, their bond the foundation of this new world. The figure smiled, its form dissolving into light. "You have proven yourselves worthy. The artifact is yours to wield. But remember, its power is a responsibility, not a gift." The chamber returned to its original state, the artifact now hovering gently before them. Yerrick and Serenith exchanged a glance, their earlier tension replaced by a newfound understanding. Heading: A new beginning. As they reached out to claim the artifact, Corrin's voice broke the silence. "Wait." They turned to see him standing at the edge of the chamber, his expression dark. "You don't understand what you're dealing with," he said, his voice low. "That artifact, it's not just a tool. It's a weapon. And in the wrong hands, it could destroy everything." Jarek's eyes narrowed. "What are you saying?" Corrin stepped forward, his hand reaching for the weapon at his side. "I'm saying I can't let you take it." Part 2, The Descent into Darkness. Heading: The Heart of the City. The chamber beyond the massive door was unlike anything Yerrick had ever seen. Towering crystalline structures rose from the floor, their surfaces shimmering with an otherworldly light. The air was thick with energy, and the faint hum of ancient machinery filled the space. Serenith stepped forward, her eyes wide with wonder. This is incredible," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum. "These structures are alive, in a way. They're still functioning after all this time." Yerrick remained cautious, his weapon raised as he scanned the room for threats. "Yeah, great. Let's just find the artifact and get out of here before something decides we're not welcome." Heading: A Guide in the Shadows. As they moved deeper into the chamber, a sound caught Jarek's attention, a faint scraping, like metal against stone. He turned sharply, his weapon trained on the source of the noise. "Show yourself," he barked, his voice echoing through the chamber. From the shadows emerged a figure, hunched and cloaked in tattered robes. The figure raised its hands in a gesture of surrender, revealing a face that was distinctly alien but not unfamiliar. "Easy, human," the figure said, its voice rough but calm. "I mean you no harm." Serenith stepped forward, her curiosity piqued. "Who are you?" The figure lowered its hood, revealing a face marked by scars and age. "Name's Corin. I've been living down here for, well, longer than I care to remember. You're not the first to come looking for the artifact, but you might be the first to actually make it this far." Heading: An offer of assistance. Yarok eyed Corin suspiciously. "And why should we trust you?" Corin shrugged. "You don't have to. But if you want to survive what's ahead, you'll need someone who knows these ruins better than you do. I can get you to the artifact chamber. For a price, of course." Serenith glanced at Yarok, her expression thoughtful. "We could use his help. These ruins are more complex than I anticipated." Yarok hesitated, his instinct screaming at him to refuse. But they were running out of time, and the artifact was their only priority. "Fine," he said finally. "But if you try anything, you won't live to regret it." Corin grinned, revealing a row of sharp teeth. "Noted." Heading: The path ahead. With Corin leading the way, the group moved deeper into the ruins. The chambers grew larger and more intricate, filled with strange machinery and glowing crystals. Serenith couldn't resist examining everything they passed, much to Jarek's annoyance. "We don't have time for this," he muttered as she paused to study a particularly ornate carving. "These carvings tell a story," she replied, her fingers tracing the symbols. "They speak of a great cataclysm, a war that destroyed this city. The artifact, it was created to prevent such a thing from happening again." Corin glanced back at her, his expression unreadable. "You're not wrong. But the artifact is more than just a tool. It's alive, in a way. And it doesn't take kindly to intruders." Heading: A deadly encounter. Their progress was halted by a sudden rumble, the ground shaking beneath their feet. From the shadows emerged a massive creature, its body covered in armored plates and its eyes glowing with a malevolent light. "What the hell is that?" Yarok demanded, raising his weapon. "Guardian," Corin replied, his voice tense. "It's been dormant for centuries. Must have sensed our presence." The creature lunged, its massive claws slashing through the air. Yarok fired, the shots ricocheting off its armored hide. Serenith activated a small device, sending a pulse of energy that momentarily stunned the creature. "We need to get past it," she shouted. Corin nodded, pointing to a narrow passageway to their left. "This way. Hurry." Heading: A test of trust. The group sprinted through the passageway, the creature's roars echoing behind them. The tunnel was tight, forcing them to move single file. Yarok took the lead, his weapon at the ready, while Serenith followed close behind. Corin brought up the rear, his movement surprisingly agile for someone of his age. As they emerged into another chamber, Yarok turned to Corin. "You said you knew these ruins. How do we stop that thing?" Corin hesitated, his eyes darting to a control panel on the wall. "There's a way to seal the tunnel behind us. But it'll take time to activate." Yarok nodded. "Do it. We'll hold it off." Heading: A fragile alliance. Yarok and Serenith positioned themselves at the entrance to the chamber, their weapons trained on the tunnel. The creature emerged moments later, its massive form filling the space. "On my mark," Yarok said, his voice calm despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. The creature charged, its claws slashing through the air. Yarok and Serenith opened fire, their shots forcing the creature to retreat momentarily. But it was relentless, its armored hide shrugging off most of their attacks. Corin, now would be a good time. Yarrick shouted. Almost there. Corin replied, his fingers flying over the control panel. The creature lunged again, its claws narrowly missing Serenith. Yarrick tackled her out of the way, the two of them rolling to the ground as the creature roared in frustration. Got it. Corin shouted. A loud rumble filled the chamber as the tunnel behind the creature collapsed, sealing it off. The creature let out a final roar before retreating into the darkness. Heading, a moment of respite. Yarrick helped Serenith to her feet, his expression grim. You okay? She nodded, though her hands were trembling. I'm fine. Thanks to you. Corin approached, his expression unreadable. That was close. But we're not out of the woods yet. The artifact chamber is just ahead, but it's heavily guarded. Yarrick glanced at Serenith, then back at Corin. Then let's finish this. Part 4, The Betrayal. Heading, A Fractured Alliance. The tension in the artifact chamber was palpable as Corin stepped forward, his hand hovering over the weapon at his side. Yarrick instinctively moved in front of Serenith, his own weapon raised and ready. I knew we shouldn't have trusted you, Yarrick growled, his voice low and dangerous. Corin's expression was unreadable, his scarred face shadowed in the artifact's pulsating light. This isn't about trust, human. It's about survival. That artifact, it's too dangerous to be left in the hands of anyone, especially not a pair of idealistic fools like you. Serenith stepped forward, her glowing skin casting a soft light on the tense scene. Corin, please. We don't have to do this. The artifact was meant to unite our species, not tear us apart. Corin's eyes flicked to her, a flicker of regret passing through them before his expression hardened. You don't understand. I've seen what it can do. I've seen the destruction it brings. I won't let that happen again. Heading, A Fight for Survival. Without warning, Corin lunged, his movements swift and precise. Yarrick barely had time to react. Instead, she activated a small device on her wrist, sending a pulse of energy that momentarily stunned Corin. He staggered back, his weapon slipping from his grasp. We don't want to hurt you, she said, her voice steady despite the chaos. But we can't let you stop us. Corin glared at her, his breathing ragged. You think you're doing the right thing, but you're wrong. That artifact, it's not what you think it is. Heading, The Artifact's Power. As the standoff continued, the artifact's light began to pulse more intensely, its hum growing louder. The chamber seemed to vibrate with energy, the air thick with an almost electric charge. What's happening? Yarrick asked, his eyes darting to the artifact. Serenith's expression was one of awe and fear. It's reacting to us. To our conflict. It's feeding on it. Corin let out a bitter laugh. You see? It thrives on chaos. The more you fight, the stronger it becomes. That's why it has to be destroyed. Yarrick shook his head, his grip tightening on his weapon. We're not destroying it. It's our only chance to bring our species together. Heading, A Desperate Choice. The artifact's light flared suddenly, its energy surging through the chamber. The ground beneath them shook, cracks forming in the ancient stone. We need to get out of here. Serenith shouted, her voice barely audible over the roar of the artifact. But Corin wasn't listening. He lunged at the artifact, his hands outstretched as if to grab it. If you won't destroy it, I will. No. Serenith cried, but it was too late. As Corin's hands touched the artifact, a blinding light filled the chamber. The energy surged through him, his body convulsing as the artifact's power overwhelmed him. Heading, The Price of Power. When the light finally faded, Corin was gone. In his place was a swirling vortex of energy, the artifact's light now darker, more menacing. What just happened? Yarrick asked, his voice trembling. Serenith's eyes were wide with horror. The artifact, it consumed him. It's using his energy to grow stronger. The vortex began to expand, its energy lashing out at the walls of the chamber. The ancient stone crumbled under the force, the ceiling beginning to collapse. We need to stop it. Yarrick shouted, his mind racing. How? Serenith asked, her voice desperate. Jarek's eyes fell on the control panel Corrin had used earlier. The chamber's defenses. We can use them to contain the artifact. Heading, a race against time. The two of them sprinted toward the control panel, dodging falling debris in bursts of energy. Serenith's fingers flew over the controls, her knowledge of ancient technology the only thing keeping them alive. I need more time, she shouted, her voice strained. We don't have time. Yarrick replied, his eyes darting to the rapidly expanding vortex. Finally, with a triumphant cry, Serenith activated the chamber's defenses. A series of energy barriers sprang up around the artifact, containing the vortex and stabilizing its energy. Heading, a fragile victory. The chamber fell silent, the artifact's light now contained within the barriers. Yarrick and Serenith stood amidst the ruins, their breathing heavy and their bodies battered. We did it, Serenith said, her voice barely above a whisper. Yarrick nodded, his expression. The look in Serenith's eyes told him she understood. Heading, a new threat. As they prepared to leave the chamber, a new sound reached their ears, a low, mechanical hum that sent a chill down Jarek's spine. What now? And if they're here, it means someone else knows about the artifact. Heading, a fight for the future. The mercenaries advanced, their weapons trained on Yarrick and Serenith. Hand over the artifact, their leader said, his voice cold and emotionless. And we might let you live. Yarrick glanced at Serenith, a grim smile on his face. Looks like we're not done yet. She nodded, her expression determined. Together. As the mercenaries opened fire, Yarrick and Serenith fought back, their bond stronger than ever. But even as they battled, they knew the real fight was just beginning.